The first comment Anna read made her breath catch. Finally, someone said it. Tired of watching talented women get treated like props. It had 40,000 likes and counting. She scrolled down. More comments flooded in by the second. Keanu is a real one for standing up for her like that. Anna handled that with so much grace. That host should be ashamed of himself. For every negative comment, there were dozens more expressing support, admiration, or their own stories of being dismissed and disrespected. Anna's phone buzzed again. This time it was her agent, Victoria, calling for the third time. Anna answered, bracing herself for the worst. "Are you okay?" Victoria asked immediately, her voice full of concern rather than anger. "I just watched what happened. That was completely unacceptable how he treated you." "I know," Anna said. "I probably made things worse by speaking up, but I couldn't just sit there anymore." "Worse?" Victoria said, and Anna could hear papers shuffling on her end. "Anna, my phone hasn't stopped ringing. I've had 4 directors reach out in the last 20 minutes wanting to work with you. 2 major magazines want interviews. A women's advocacy group wants you to speak at their next event. This isn't worse. This is a watershed moment." Anna felt dizzy. "What? People are calling you brave," Victoria said. "They're saying this is exactly the kind of thing Hollywood needs more of. There's already a hashtag trending." "Hold on, let me check. Yes, it's trending #1 worldwide." "Anna, this is big." After hanging up with Victoria, Anna sat in silence trying to process everything. Keanu had stepped away to give her some privacy, taking a call from his own people. Through the green room walls she could hear raised voices, the host still arguing with his producers. The words inexcusable and misogynistic carried clearly through the door. Her phone buzzed with a text from her mother in Cuba, who must have seen the clips online already. "Mia, I'm so proud of you. You stood up for yourself and for all of us. Tu abuelas watching from heaven and cheering." Anna felt tears sliding down her cheeks again. But they were different tears now. Cleansing ones, maybe. Hopeful ones. Over the next few hours, as Anna and Keanu finally left the studio and made their way back to their hotels, the story continued to explode across every platform. Entertainment news sites were calling it the most uncomfortable late-night interview in recent memory. Think pieces were already being written about sexism in Hollywood, about the treatment of foreign actresses, about the importance of male allies using their privilege to call out bad behavior. The network released a statement around midnight. It was carefully worded, apologizing for any offense caused while not explicitly condemning their host. But anyone could read between the lines. They were trying to distance themselves from the controversy while figuring out what to do next. The host himself tried to post on social media, a half-hearted attempt at an apology that only made things worse. "Sorry if anyone was offended by my questions tonight. Just trying to have fun and keep things light. No harm intended." The response was swift and brutal. People tore into him for the non-apology, for trying to make it about others being offended rather than his behavior being offensive. Within an hour, he'd deleted the post, but screenshots had already spread everywhere. By the next morning, when Anna woke up in her hotel room, the story had grown even bigger. Major news outlets were covering it, not just entertainment sections but actual news desks. Clips from the interview were being played on morning shows, with hosts and guests debating what had happened and what it meant for the industry. Anna did something she normally avoided and actually read the articles being written about her. "Ana de Armas stands up to sexist host," read one headline. Another said, "Keanu Reeves masterclass in being an ally." There was thoughtful commentary about how this incident reflected larger patterns in Hollywood, how women, particularly women of color and foreign actresses, faced constant pressure to accept disrespect with a smile. Some articles quoted other actresses sharing their own experiences with the same host, stories that hadn't been public before but were now coming to light. By day 2, the network made their move. They announced that the show was going on hiatus for restructuring and reflection on our values and standards. It was corporate speak, but everyone understood what it meant. The host's days were numbered. Sure enough, a week later came the official announcement. The show was being canceled. There were more corporate statements about moving in a different direction and commitment to respectful programming, but the message was clear. The host tried to position himself as a victim of cancel culture, giving an interview where he claimed he'd been targeted for being edgy and pushing boundaries. But the narrative had already been written and it wasn't his version. Too many people had come forward with their own stories. Too many witnesses had confirmed that his behavior wasn't just about one bad night, but a pattern that had been tolerated for too long. For Anna, the weeks following the interview were surreal. She'd expected fallout, but not like this. Instead of being blacklisted, she was being celebrated. Directors who'd never considered her for dramatic roles were suddenly interested. Scripts that she wouldn't have been offered before were arriving at her agent's office. She was invited to speak on panels about women in film, about standing up to discrimination, about being authentic in an industry that often demanded the opposite. The movie she and Keanu had been promoting became one of the most anticipated releases of the year. The studio had worried the controversy might hurt box office numbers, but the opposite happened. People turned out in huge numbers, many saying they wanted to support Anna after what she'd been through. Critics praised her performance, with several noting that it was impossible to watch her work and not see the depth and skill that the host had so casually dismissed. At the premiere, walking the red carpet in a stunning gown, Anna was asked by every interviewer about that interview. She handled each question with grace, always bringing it back to the bigger picture. "It's not about one person or one incident," she'd say. "It's about changing a culture that's accepted this kind of treatment for too long. It's about making sure the next generation of actresses doesn't have to fight the same battles." Keanu, walking the carpet alongside her, deflected praise for his role in the incident. "I just said what needed to be said. Anna's the one who had to sit there and experience that disrespect. She's the one who stood her ground. I was just supporting a colleague and friend." The night of the premiere, at the after-party, a young actress approached Anna nervously. She couldn't have been more than 22, probably just starting out in the industry. "I wanted to thank you," the young woman said. "I've been told so many times to just smile and take it when people make comments about my body or my face instead of my work. Watching you stand up for yourself made me realize I don't have to accept that. You gave me permission to advocate for myself." Anna hugged her, feeling the weight of what had happened settle into something meaningful. This was bigger than one bad interview, bigger than her own career. Something had shifted, not completely, not perfectly, but enough to matter. 6 months after the interview, Anna received a call from a major studio. They wanted her for a lead role in a prestigious drama, the kind of serious, complex character that would have been automatically given to an American actress before. The director specifically mentioned seeing her handle the interview situation and being impressed by her composure and strength. "That's the kind of presence we need for this character," he said. During the first table read for that new project, Anna found herself surrounded by a cast and crew who treated her with immediate respect, who asked her about her character insights, who valued her input. It should have been normal. It should have always been like this. But she knew it wasn't always. And she knew that part of why it was happening now was because she'd refused to stay silent that night on live television. Keanu and Anna stayed in touch after their promotional tour ended. They'd become real friends through the experience, bonded by that surreal night and everything that came after. He sent her a text on the day her new film was announced. "Proud of you. You earned this. Not because of one interview, but because of years of hard work and undeniable talent." Anna saved that text. On hard days when she doubted herself or faced new challenges, she'd read it and remember that night in the studio. Remember finding her voice. Remember refusing to be diminished. Remember that sometimes standing up for yourself doesn't end your career. It transforms it. The talk show that had hosted that disastrous interview eventually found a new host, a woman known for thoughtful conversations and genuine curiosity about her guests. In her first week, she interviewed an up-and-coming actress and spent the entire segment asking about her training, her process, her artistic inspirations. It was exactly what an interview should be, and viewers noticed. They appreciated it. They supported it. A year after the incident, Anna was nominated for several major awards for her performance in the film she and Keanu had been promoting that night. At one awards show presenting an award for Best Supporting Actress, she took a moment before reading the nominees to say something that had been on her mind. "I want to dedicate this moment to every actress who's ever been told they're just a pretty face," Anna said, her voice carrying through the theater. "To everyone who's had their work dismissed, their talent questioned, their worth reduced to their appearance. You are more than that. Your art matters. Your voice matters. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." The standing ovation lasted for over a minute. In the audience, Keanu was on his feet applauding, a huge smile on his face. Around him, hundreds of industry professionals stood and clapped, some with tears in their eyes. The moment was broadcast around the world, and once again Anna's words sparked conversations and inspired people who'd faced similar struggles. The host who'd started it all faded from public view. He tried launching a podcast, but it never gained traction. He gave occasional interviews complaining about how he'd been treated, but fewer and fewer people cared to listen. His career became a cautionary tale about what happens when you mistake cruelty for humor, when you punch down instead of up, when you fail to recognize that the world is changing and you need to change with it. For Anna, life didn't become perfect. She still faced challenges, still encountered people who underestimated her, still had to prove herself more than some of her peers did. But something fundamental had shifted. She'd found her voice that night in the studio, and she never lost it again. Every time someone tried to dismiss her, she remembered that she didn't have to accept it. Every time she felt small, she remembered standing up. Every time she doubted her worth, she remembered Keanu calmly, firmly, methodically defending her talent and demanding she be treated with respect. And maybe most importantly, she became the kind of person who stood up for others the way Keanu had stood up for her. When she saw young actresses facing similar treatment, she spoke up. When she witnessed disrespect on sets, she addressed it. When she had the power to make a difference, she used it. The ripple effects of that one night continued spreading outward, creating change in ways both big and small. Years later, when students in film schools studied that interview as an example of a cultural turning point, they'd see two people who refused to let disrespect become normalized. They'd see someone finding the courage to stand up for themselves, and someone else using their privilege and platform to amplify that stand. They'd see a moment when something shifted, when enough became enough, when the old ways of doing things cracked just a little bit more. And Anna, watching those same clips years later, would remember not just the anger and humiliation of that night, but also the strength she'd found within herself, the realization that her voice mattered, that her dignity was not negotiable, that she deserved to be treated as the artist she'd worked so hard to become. That night had tried to diminish her, but instead, it had revealed exactly how strong she really was. Actually, Keanu said, his voice cutting through the host's attempt to escape to commercial, I want to address the audience directly for a moment. If that's okay. The host looked like he wanted to object, but what could he say? They were already in freefall. Might as well see where they landed. He gave a tight nod, and Keanu turned to face the camera, looking directly into the lens like he was talking to each viewer personally. I want to thank all the crews I've worked with over the years, Keanu said. The camera operators, the gaffers, the set designers, the costume departments, the makeup artists. Movies are made by hundreds of people working together, and everyone's contribution matters. But I especially want to thank the actresses I've had the honor of working with, because they've taught me so much about this craft. The camera operator actually leaned in closer, clearly moved by what was happening. Anna could see the red light blinking steadily, capturing every word, every moment of this extraordinary breakdown in usual talk show protocol. When you watch a film, you're seeing the end result of months or years of work, Keanu continued. You're seeing people who've given everything to bring a story to life. And when you reduce any of those people to just their appearance, you're missing everything that actually matters. You're missing the artistry, the effort, the heart. The host tried to jump in with a joke, something about not being able to take a compliment, his voice carrying that defensive edge of someone who knows they've messed up but can't admit it. The attempted humor landed with a thud. The audience didn't laugh. A few people actually groaned. It was the kind of sound you make when you watch someone embarrass themselves and you feel it in your own gut. Anna watched the host's face as he registered the reaction, or lack thereof. She'd seen that look before, on directors who'd made one too many inappropriate comments and suddenly realized the room had turned against them. It was the look of someone who'd always gotten away with something and suddenly couldn't anymore. I don't think you understand, Anna said, finding her voice again. She was done being quiet, done being polite. Keanu had opened the door and she was walking through it. When you make comments like the ones you've made tonight, you're not just insulting me. You're sending a message to every young actress watching that their work doesn't matter as much as how they look. You're telling girls who want to act that they should expect to be treated as decoration. The host shifted in his chair, uncomfortable now in a way that went beyond embarrassment. This was the discomfort of someone realizing they might face actual consequences for their actions. "I was just trying to be funny," he said, but his voice lacked conviction. "Funny to who?" Anna asked. "Because I'm not laughing." "The audience isn't laughing. The only person who seemed to think any of this was funny was you." She could feel her heart pounding, adrenaline coursing through her system. This was career-ending territory, potentially. You didn't call out powerful people on their own shows and expect to walk away unscathed. But something had broken inside her during this interview. Some tolerance for disrespect that she'd carried too long. "In my country," Anna continued, "we have a saying. Roughly translated, it means respect is earned, but courtesy is free. You've shown me no courtesy tonight, and you definitely haven't earned my respect." The host's mouth opened and closed like a fish. He looked at his notes, shuffled some papers, looked at the audience as if hoping they'd save him somehow. But the audience just stared back, their expressions ranging from supportive of Anna to openly hostile toward him. One woman in the third row was shaking her head slowly, disappointment written all over her face. "Let's go to commercial," the host said again, more desperately this time. The floor manager gave the signal, and suddenly the red lights blinked off. They weren't live anymore, at least not for the next few minutes. The host stood up immediately, his microphone still on as he muttered something under his breath that definitely wasn't appropriate for television. His producers descended on him like vultures, 3 people with headsets and clipboards all talking at once. Anna could only catch fragments of what they were saying, but words like damage control and apology kept floating over. The host was arguing back, his voice rising, insisting he'd done nothing wrong, that he was just trying to be edgy, that this was his show and his style. Meanwhile, Keanu leaned over to Anna. "Are you okay?" he asked quietly. Anna nodded, though her hands were still shaking. "Thank you," she said. "Thank you for saying something. I've never had anyone do that before." "You shouldn't have needed me to," Keanu said, and he looked genuinely angry now. "This shouldn't still be happening in this industry. We should be past this." A production assistant approached them nervously. "We're going to come back from commercial in 2 minutes," she said. "The producers want to know if you're comfortable finishing the interview." Keanu looked at Anna. "Your call," he said. "We can walk right now if you want." "I'll walk with you," Anna considered it. Part of her wanted nothing more than to leave, to get in that black SUV and never look back. But another part of her, the part that had fought so hard to get here, refused to run. "I'll stay," she said. "But only if we actually talk about the film. No more jokes, no more commentary about my appearance. Just the work." The assistant nodded and scurried back to relay the message. Anna could see the host's face darken as he received it. He was used to controlling the narrative, used to being the one who decided how interviews went. Having demands made of him on his own show must have felt like a power shift he wasn't prepared for. The floor manager started counting down again. 10 seconds to live. The host returned to his desk, his smile now looking painted on, completely artificial. Anna straightened her spine, lifted her chin. If they were doing this, she was doing it on her terms. The red light blinked on and they were back. The host's voice had changed, becoming more formal, more careful. "Welcome back," he said. "We're here with Ana de Armas and Keanu Reeves. Let's talk about the film itself. Anna, can you tell us about your character's journey in the story?" It was the question he should have asked at the beginning. Anna answered it thoroughly, professionally, talking about the research she'd done, the emotional preparation, the themes the film explored. Keanu added his own perspective, discussing how their character's relationship evolved throughout the story. They talked about the director's vision, about specific scenes that had been challenging or meaningful. The host asked follow-up questions, but they were bland, safe, nothing like the sharp-edged comments from earlier. He was going through the motions now, just trying to get through the segment without causing more damage. The energy in the studio had completely changed. Where before there'd been that electric buzz of live entertainment, now there was just tension and awkwardness. The audience watched it all with a kind of fascinated attention, like watching a car crash in slow motion. They could see the host struggling, see him trying to find his footing again and failing. Every attempt at his usual humor fell flat. Every time he tried to inject some of his trademark edge, he'd catch himself and pull back, clearly worried about making things worse. About halfway through the post-commercial segment, someone in the audience shouted, "We love you, Anna." The host flinched like he'd been slapped. Scattered applause broke out, growing stronger until most of the audience was clapping. The host had to sit there and wait for it to die down, his fake smile getting tighter and tighter. When they finally wrapped the interview, there were no warm goodbyes. No behind-the-scenes photos, no lingering chit-chat. Anna and Keanu were escorted off stage immediately. As they walked back toward the green room, Anna could hear the host's voice rising again, arguing with his producers. The word overreaction floated out clearly, followed by someone else's sharp response that she couldn't quite make out. In the green room, Anna finally let herself collapse onto the couch. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving her feeling shaky and exhausted. Keanu sat beside her, his presence solid and reassuring. "That was intense," he said, which might have been the understatement of the year. Anna laughed, slightly hysterical. "I can't believe that just happened. I can't believe you said all that. I can't believe I said all that." "You should believe it," Keanu said. "You stood up for yourself. That takes courage." "Or stupidity," Anna said. "Do you know how many enemies I just made? Do you know how many people you just inspired?" Keanu countered. "That's going to be everywhere by tomorrow. Social media, news sites, everywhere. And yeah, some people won't like it, but the people who matter will." Anna wanted to believe him, but she'd been in Hollywood long enough to know that making waves, especially as a woman, especially as a foreign actress, could be career suicide. She thought about all the roles she might not get now, all the directors who might decide she was too much trouble, all the opportunities that might close because she dared to call out disrespect. Her phone, which had been on silent in her purse, started buzzing insistently, then again, and again. She pulled it out and saw her screen flooded with notifications. Texts from her agent, her manager, her publicist, friends in the industry, family back home. All within the last few minutes. "It's already online," she said, scrolling through message after message. "Someone recorded it and posted it." Keanu pulled out his own phone and Anna watched his face as he read. "It's everywhere," he confirmed. "And Anna, you should read some of these comments." He handed her his phone and Anna found herself looking at thousands of responses to a video clip of the interview. Her hands trembled as she scrolled. Keanu settled back in his seat, but there was nothing relaxed about his posture. Every line of his body conveyed attention, focus, purpose. Anna had seen him do fight scenes where he looked less intense than he did right now. The difference was he wasn't raising his voice. He wasn't getting aggressive. He was just looking at the host with those dark eyes of his, and somehow that was more powerful than any outburst could have been. "Let me tell you about Anna's preparation for this role," Keanu began, his voice conversational but firm. "She showed up to set 3 months before we started shooting. 3 months. Most actors show up a week early, maybe 2 if they're really dedicated, but Anna was there every single day working with our stunt coordinator." The host tried to interrupt. "Sure, but I'm not finished," Keanu said, not unkindly, but with enough weight that the host actually stopped talking. The audience was absolutely transfixed now. "She learned to handle firearms from our weapons specialist. Not just how to hold a gun for the camera, but actual proper technique, stance, breath control, trigger discipline. She can outshoot half the crew now." Anna felt something loosening in her chest, like a knot slowly unraveling. She hadn't expected this. She'd expected to fight this battle alone, the way she'd fought so many battles before. "She also spent hours every day with our dialect coach," Keanu continued, because her character is American and Anna wanted to get every single nuance right. "Do you have any idea how hard that is? To act in what's technically your second language while also adopting a completely different accent? It's like performing surgery with one hand tied behind your back. Most native English speakers couldn't do what she does." The host's face was starting to flush red. He clearly wasn't used to being challenged on his own show. Especially not in this calm, methodical way that left no room for him to play it off as a joke. "And the stunts," Keanu said, warming to his subject now. "There's a scene in the movie where her character fights off 3 attackers in a stairwell. 1 take. We did it in 1 take because Anna had practiced that choreography so many times she could do it in her sleep. The stunt coordinator said it was some of the best work he'd seen from any actor, male or female." Anna remembered that scene. She'd been terrified she'd mess it up, that she'd forget a move or miss a mark. But Keanu had been there that day, watching from behind the monitors, and when she'd finished, he'd been the first one to start clapping. "But let's talk about the actual acting," Keanu said, and now he leaned forward, elbows on his knees, completely focused. Because that's what you seem to think she can't do, right? You think she's just there to look pretty while the real actors do the work. The host opened his mouth, probably to defend himself, but Keanu kept going. There's a scene in the middle of the film, Keanu said. Anna's character finds out that everything she believed about her past was a lie. Everything she thought she knew about herself, her family, her whole identity, it's all been fabricated. And she has to process that in real time on camera, without a single word of dialogue. Just her face, her eyes showing this complete devastation. Anna remembered that scene too. It had been one of the hardest days of filming. She'd had to go to a dark place emotionally, had to tap into her own fears and insecurities to make it real. We did 4 takes, Keanu said. By the second take, there wasn't a dry eye behind the camera. The director was crying. The DP was crying. I was watching on the monitor, and I had to walk away because it was too intense. That's not someone who's just there to look pretty. That's a real actor doing real work. The studio had gone so quiet you could hear the air conditioning humming. The audience was completely still, hanging on every word. Even the band members had stopped fiddling with their instruments. The host looked like he wanted to be anywhere else in the world. You want to talk about chemistry? Keanu asked, and there was an edge to his voice now. Chemistry doesn't work if only one person is acting. It's a collaboration. It's trust. It's 2 people being so in tune with each other that you can have entire conversations with just a look. Anna and I have that. We built that through hours of rehearsal, through mutual respect, through recognizing each other as equals. The host tried again to regain control. Look, I think you're taking this a bit too seriously. No, Keanu said, and the single word cut through the studio like a knife. I don't think I'm taking it seriously enough, because what you're doing right now is diminishing someone's work, someone's talent, someone's worth as an artist, all because of how they look. And that's not okay. Anna felt tears pricking her eyes again, but this time they weren't from humiliation. They were from gratitude, from relief, from the overwhelming feeling of having someone actually stand up for her in a way that no one ever had before. Let me tell you about some other actresses I've worked with, Keanu said, and he was really rolling now. Carrie-Anne Moss in The Matrix, Sandra Bullock in Speed, Winona Ryder in Dracula, Charlize Theron in Sweet November. Every single one of them brought something to those films that made them better, that made me better as an actor. To suggest that they or Anna or any actress is just decoration is insulting to everyone involved in making movies. He paused, taking a breath, and when he spoke again, his voice was softer but somehow more powerful. Anna speaks 3 languages fluently, he said, Spanish, English, and some Portuguese. How many do you speak? The host muttered something that might have been 1. She left her home country to pursue her dreams in a foreign film industry that constantly told her she wasn't enough, Keanu continued. She worked on Spanish television and Spanish films, built a whole career, and then started over from scratch in Hollywood. Do you know how much courage that takes? How much determination? Anna was fully crying now, but she didn't care. Let them see. Let the cameras catch it. These were honest tears, earned tears. She's been nominated for awards, Keanu said. She's been recognized by critics as one of the most talented actors of her generation. But none of that matters to you because you've decided that she's just a pretty face. You've looked at her and made a judgment based on nothing but your own biases. The host was visibly squirming in his chair now. His producers were probably screaming in his earpiece, but there was nothing he could do. They were live. This was happening in real time, and there was no way to stop it. I've been in this industry for over 3 decades, Keanu said. I've worked with hundreds of actors, directors, crew members, and I can tell you without hesitation that Anna is one of the most professional, most dedicated, most talented people I've ever had the privilege of working with. The fact that she also happens to be beautiful doesn't diminish any of that. It's just one more aspect of who she is. He turned to look at Anna, then really look at her, and his expression softened. I'm sorry you had to sit here and listen to this, he said to her directly, ignoring the host completely now. You shouldn't have to defend your talent or your work to anyone. It should speak for itself. And it does to anyone who's actually paying attention. Anna managed to find her voice. Thank you, she said, and it came out as barely a whisper. Keanu turned back to the host and his expression hardened again. You asked me how I work with her. I work with her the same way I work with any talented actor, with respect, with collaboration, with the understanding that we're all there to make the best possible film we can make. She makes me better. She pushes me to bring my best work. That's what real co-stars do for each other. The host tried one more time to salvage the situation. I think there's been a misunderstanding. No misunderstanding, Keanu said flatly. You were disrespectful to my colleague and my friend. You dismissed her work, her talent, and her worth as an artist. There's no misunderstanding there. That's exactly what happened, and everyone watching knows it. The silence that followed was deafening. The host's face had gone from red to almost purple. His hands were gripping his desk so hard his knuckles were white. The audience didn't know whether to applaud or stay quiet, so they did both, scattered clapping that faded almost as soon as it started. Anna found herself looking at Keanu with new eyes. She'd known he was a good person. Everyone in Hollywood knew that about him. But this was different. This wasn't just general kindness. This was someone putting his own reputation on the line to defend her, on live television with millions watching. He hadn't just supported her. He'd demolished every argument against her piece by piece with calm logic and undeniable facts. The host cleared his throat, trying desperately to move forward. Well, let's take a commercial break. But before the cameras could cut away, Keanu had one more thing to say. The host leaned forward in his chair, that smile still playing on his lips. Anna had done enough interviews to recognize when someone was about to make a joke at her expense. She'd learned to laugh along, to be a good sport, to not make waves. That's what you did when you were trying to make it in Hollywood. Especially when English wasn't your first language and you were still proving yourself. So Anna, the host said, drawing out her name like he was savoring it, I've got to ask. In the movie, you're playing this incredibly complex character, right? But let's be honest here. When guys go to see this movie, they're not really thinking about character complexity, are they? The audience laughed, some of them uncomfortably. Anna felt her smile freeze on her face, but she kept it there. She'd been trained well. Always look pleasant, always be gracious. She started to respond, trying to redirect the conversation to the actual work she'd done on the film. Actually, my character has this really fascinating arc where she... Sure, the host interrupted, waving his hand dismissively. But come on, you're basically the pretty scenery in an action movie. And hey, there's nothing wrong with that. Someone's got to look good while the real action is happening, right? The words landed like a slap. Anna felt her face grow hot, but she maintained her composure. In her peripheral vision, she could see Keanu shift slightly in his seat. The audience's laughter had definitely become more uncertain now, like they weren't sure if they should be finding this funny or not. I actually did most of my own stunts, Anna said, her voice steady despite the anger building inside her. I trained for 3 months before we started filming. Oh, I'm sure you did, the host said with a patronizing nod. But let's talk about what really matters, that dress you wore in the club scene. Now that was acting. He emphasized the last word with air quotes and a wink at the audience, who responded with scattered laughter. Anna's hands gripped the armrest of the couch. She could feel her heart pounding in her chest. This wasn't just casual sexism anymore. This was deliberate, cruel even. She'd faced dismissive comments before, subtle digs about being cast for her looks rather than her talent, but never this blatantly, never on live television in front of millions of people. My character in that scene was actually going undercover, Anna said, her accent thickening slightly with emotion. She was using people's assumptions against them. The costume was a choice that came from understanding who she was. The host rolled his eyes, actually rolled his eyes on camera. Right. Deep stuff. Very deep. He turned to Keanu. Man, you must have it rough trying to act opposite someone who's basically there to look pretty. I mean, how do you even work with that? Do you just have to pretend there's actual acting happening? The air in the studio changed. It was like someone had sucked all the oxygen out of the room. The audience wasn't laughing anymore. A few people made uncomfortable sounds. Even the band members looked at each other with raised eyebrows. Anna felt tears prickling at the corners of her eyes, but she absolutely refused to cry. Not here, not on camera, not in front of this man who clearly got some kind of sick pleasure from putting her down. She'd worked so hard to get here. Years of auditions, of being told her accent was too strong, of being offered roles as the girlfriend, the secretary, the eye candy. She'd fought for this role, proven herself on set every single day, earned the respect of the crew and her fellow actors. And now this man, sitting behind his desk with his smug smile, was reducing all of that to nothing more than her appearance. I think you're making assumptions, Anna said, and she was proud that her voice didn't shake. You haven't asked me about my preparation, about my research for the role. About the emotional journey my character goes through. You've only talked about how I look. Hey, the host said, holding up his hands in mock surrender. Don't get all sensitive on me. I'm just saying what everyone's thinking. This is Hollywood, sweetheart. Pretty girls get put in movies to be pretty. Guys like Keanu here do the actual heavy lifting. That's just how it works. Why are you getting upset about reality? The word sweetheart hung in the air like a grenade. Anna felt something crack inside her chest. She'd heard that tone before. That condescending, dismissive way some men talk to women they didn't take seriously. She'd heard it from directors who didn't think she could handle dramatic roles. From producers who suggested she stick to playing the love interest. From casting agents who told her she should be grateful just to be in the room. But she'd also heard a different tone. She'd heard it from Keanu during their first rehearsal, when he'd asked her about her character's motivation and actually listened to her answer. She'd heard it from their director, who'd told her she brought something special to the role that no one else could. She'd heard it from crew members who'd watched her nail a particularly difficult scene and applauded afterward. Reality, Anna repeated, and now there was steel in her voice. Reality is that I spent 6 months preparing for this role. Reality is that I learned to shoot, to fight, to speak with an American accent. Reality is that I'm bilingual, which means I can do things you can't. Reality is that I'm a professional who takes my craft seriously. The host laughed, but it sounded forced now. Whoa, someone's feisty today, I like it. See, this is that Latin fire everyone talks about, right? And there it was. The cherry on top of an already terrible Sunday. Not only was he dismissing her as an actress, now he was reducing her to ethnic stereotypes. Anna felt her hands trembling. She wanted to walk off the set. She wanted to tell this man exactly what she thought of him in both English and Spanish. She wanted to scream, but she didn't do any of those things. Because years of navigating Hollywood as a foreign actress had taught her that losing your temper meant losing everything. It meant being labeled difficult, temperamental, not worth the trouble. It meant fewer roles, fewer opportunities, fewer chances to prove yourself. So she sat there, smile still plastered on her face, even though it felt like it might crack and fall off any second. The host was still talking, still making his little jokes, still getting his laughs from some parts of the audience who either didn't understand how wrong this was or didn't care. He made another comment about actresses who think they're more than eye candy, and suggested that maybe Anna should just enjoy the ride instead of taking herself so seriously. That's when Anna noticed Keanu. He'd been quiet during this whole exchange, and for a moment she'd almost forgotten he was there. But now she saw his expression and it sent a chill through her. His face had gone completely still, like stone. His jaw was set in a way she'd never seen before, not even when they'd filmed the intense confrontation scenes in the movie. His eyes were fixed on the host with an intensity that would have made most people extremely uncomfortable. The host noticed it too. He must have, because he suddenly turned his attention to Keanu, probably hoping to find an ally in his jokes. Come on, man, the host said, that fake casual tone back in his voice. Back me up here. You know how it works. Leading men and leading ladies, they're not the same thing, right? You're out there doing the real acting and she's there to make the movie posters look good. That's the way it's always been. Anna held her breath. This was the moment. This was where Keanu could laugh along, could play the game, could take the easy route of male solidarity and throw her under the bus. She wouldn't have blamed him. That's what the industry expected. That's what usually happened. But Keanu didn't laugh. He didn't smile. He didn't nod in agreement. Instead, he leaned forward in his seat, his movement slow and deliberate, and when he spoke, his voice was quiet, but it carried through the entire studio like thunder. Actually, Keanu said, and there was something in that single word that made the host's smile falter. I think you're wrong about everything you just said. The audience went completely silent. You could have heard a pin drop in that studio. Anna turned to look at Keanu, hardly daring to believe what she was hearing. The host's face shifted through several emotions in rapid succession: confusion, irritation, and then a forced attempt to brush it off as part of the show. Oh yeah? The host said, trying to sound amused but not quite pulling it off. How so? And that's when Keanu really began to speak, and Anna realized that everything was about to change. The black SUV pulled up to the studio entrance just as the sun was setting over Los Angeles. Inside, Ana de Armas checked her reflection one last time in the tinted window. smoothing down the fabric of her emerald green dress. She'd chosen it carefully that morning, something elegant but not too flashy. Tonight was important. This wasn't just any interview. This was primetime television, millions of viewers, and a chance to talk about a project she'd poured her heart into for the past year. Beside her, Keanu Reeves sat quietly, dressed in his usual understated black suit. He wasn't much for the promotional circus that came with big movies, but he always showed up when it mattered. He glanced over at Anna and must have noticed the way she was fidgeting with her clutch purse. "You're going to be great," he said, his voice calm and reassuring in that way he had. "Just be yourself." Anna smiled, grateful for his presence. They'd become genuine friends during filming, and having him there made the whole thing less nerve-wracking. Still, she couldn't shake the butterflies in her stomach. English wasn't her first language, and while she'd worked hard to perfect it, live television always made her worry about stumbling over her words or missing some cultural reference that everyone else seemed to get automatically. The studio handler opened the car door, and suddenly they were in it. The rush of activity, assistants with headsets talking quickly into microphones, clipboard-wielding producers checking things off lists, the general controlled chaos that happened behind the scenes of any major talk show. Anna and Keanu were ushered through a side entrance, past photos of previous guests lining the hallways, famous faces staring out from framed pictures frozen in moments of laughter and conversation. Their green room was nice enough. A leather couch, a table with fruit and bottled water, a mirror surrounded by those bright bulbs that made everything look slightly surreal. A young production assistant poked her head in to let them know they had about 20 minutes before they'd be called to stage. Anna accepted a bottle of water but couldn't bring herself to drink any. Her stomach was doing flips. Keanu, on the other hand, seemed completely at ease. He'd done this 1,000 times before and somehow never seemed fazed by any of it. He sat back on the couch, long legs stretched out, and started telling Anna a story about a funny thing that happened on set last month. She was pretty sure he was doing it just to distract her, and she appreciated it more than she could say. A knock on the door interrupted them. A woman with a headset and an iPad stepped in, introducing herself as the segment producer. She went over the basic flow of the interview, what topics would be covered, how long each segment would run. Standard stuff, really. They'd talk about the movie, share some behind-the-scenes stories, maybe play a clip. The host would ask about their chemistry as co-stars, what it was like working together, the usual questions that came up in these situations. "He's excited to have you both on," the producer said with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "He's been talking about this interview all week." Something about the way she said it made Anna pause, but before she could think too much about it, they were being called to stage. The walk from the green room to the studio felt both too long and too short at the same time. Anna could hear the house band playing, the warm-up comedian getting the audience energized, the whole machinery of live television humming along like a well-oiled machine. They waited in the wings, just out of sight of the audience. Anna could see the stage now, the desk where the host sat, the famous backdrop she'd seen on television countless times, the couch where she and Keanu would sit. It all felt surreal, like watching herself in a movie rather than actually being there. The host was doing his opening monologue, and the audience was eating it up. Waves of laughter rolled through the studio as he delivered punchline after punchline. Anna had watched his show before, done her research like she always did. He had a reputation for being edgy, for pushing boundaries with his humor. Some people loved that about him. Others found him abrasive. The network clearly loved him, though, because his ratings were solid and he'd been in that chair for nearly 5 years. From where she stood, Anna could see him in profile. He was younger than she'd expected, maybe mid-30s, with the kind of carefully styled hair that probably took an hour to make look casually perfect. He moved around the stage with the confidence of someone who owned the space, who knew the audience would laugh when he wanted them to laugh. The segment producer was back, whispering that they'd be up after the commercial break. Anna's heart rate kicked up another notch. Keanu must have sensed it because he leaned over and said quietly, "Remember, we're just having a conversation. That's all this is." But Anna knew it wasn't that simple. Every word would be analyzed, clipped, shared on social media. Every expression caught by the cameras would be screenshot and turned into memes. That was the reality of celebrity in the modern age. Nothing was just a conversation anymore. The commercial break began, and suddenly they were being guided onto the stage. The audience applauded that strange sound of hundreds of hands clapping in unison. The lights were brighter than Anna had expected, hot on her skin. She found her mark on the couch, Keanu settling in beside her, and tried to remember to breathe normally. The host stood up from behind his desk to greet them, all smiles and charm for the cameras. He shook Keanu's hand with the kind of familiarity that came from being in the same industry, then turned to Anna. His eyes swept over her in a way that made her skin prickle, just a fraction of a second too long before meeting her gaze. "Welcome. Welcome," he said, his voice booming out over the studio. "So glad you could both make it." They exchanged pleasantries as they settled into their seats, the kind of small talk that filled the space while everyone got comfortable. The audience was still buzzing with excitement, the energy in the room palpable. Anna crossed her legs, positioned herself the way she'd been taught. Smile ready, professional mode fully activated. The floor manager counted down with his fingers. 5, 4, 3, 2, and then they were live again. The red light on the camera blinked on, and suddenly millions of people were watching. The host launched into his introduction, building them up, talking about their new movie, with the kind of enthusiasm that sounded genuine, even though Anna knew it was part of his job to sound that way about everything. "So here's the thing," the host said, settling back in his chair with the easy confidence of someone in his element. "I've seen the movie, and I've got to say, you two have some serious chemistry on screen." The audience made approving sounds. It was a safe opening, exactly the kind of softball question Anna had been expecting. She started to answer, but something in the host's expression stopped her. There was a glint in his eye, a slight upturn at the corner of his mouth that suggested he was about to take this conversation somewhere she wasn't expecting, and she was right to be worried. Because what happened next would turn this routine promotional appearance into something neither she nor Keanu would ever forget.